Hello, everyone. Sorry that the camera twisted again. Hi, everyone. It's William from Allegory Gallery here, and we've got Andrew and Idabelle in the background as well. Thank you all for hanging out with us. We're here a little bit early today. Since we're on a reset week, there are no rules. We can do a live whenever we want to do a live. So we are doing our live here at 5. Hello, Idabelle. You have things to say?
She's going in for her surgery tomorrow morning.
Yeah, she's got surgery tomorrow. Yeah. Oh. Lori is here. Hello, Lori. If you're out there, please say hi. Oh, look at that little girl. Oh my goodness. Oh, Gesundheit.
Bless you.
You gonna sneeze in here too?
She says every time she goes on camera, she sneezes.
Oh. So, today, of course, we are not doing any selling this week anymore. So the online store is shut down, if you didn't notice that. It is now closed for the week. Also, we are not doing any selling during these broadcasts. These broadcasts are purely demonstrational.
And check-ins.
And check-ins, nothing for sale. So, at least that's the plan.
And one of the reasons why I wanted to go on earlier today is because usually by the time we finish with the 7:30, it gets pretty late.
Mm-hmm.
And so this way we'll have a little bit of daylight so we can do stuff up at the cottage. We already started with our reset this week.
Mm-hmm.
And it's going to be a late night, I think, with all the stuff that we have to do. I think our first task tonight will be to move William's shipping area.
Mm-hmm.
And get that kind of situated, but we'll see.
That's the plan at the moment, is to move the shipping department into its new location, because it is kind of in the middle of everything right now, and it's being moved into a corner, kind of to the end of the building. And that way that will allow us to have all of the room then to kind of rearrange everything else.
Mm-hmm.
So once we get me in my little corner, which is actually not a little corner, it's going to be bigger, and I'll have more storage space, which will be good. I kind of use that space now, but only kind of. So it'll be really nice to be able to move things around and get things sorted out a little bit. And I'll have more space for organizing the inventory for the online store and packing and shipping. So that'll be good. Hello, everybody. We have Michelle joining us. Hello, Michelle. Thank you for joining in. Isabel is a screamer, says Marianne. Yeah, she likes to talk. Oh, what'd I say? I just read the text. I didn't even realize I said that. Idabelle, not Isabel. Idabelle. Oh, she won't tell me. She's trying to get back in? Yeah? Oh, she wants to be in here with us.
I guess my daddy thinks that your name is Isabel.
I can't believe I just read what was there. Let's see. Oh, hey guys, surprised to see an early live. Almost missed it. Yeah, we're going to go live at all times now. Who knows? Who knows? Marion says he read what I typed. I did. I read right what you typed. Lorraine is here. Hello, Lorraine. Good to see you here. I haven't seen you in a while, I feel like. Different times, different people, right? Let's see here. Hello, Suzanne. Thank you for joining us. Marianne's asking if people have their notifications on. Right, so you know when we go live, that'll tell you, right? Put those notifications on. Hit the little bell on our YouTube channel. Make sure you hit the going to all of the events that Facebook sets up for us. Suzanne says, I hear a sweet cat. Yes, Idabelle. She got a little on video experience here earlier, if you missed that. But she's going in for her surgery tomorrow, early tomorrow morning. So we'll have another, I know, she got wide eyes, another cat to babysit a little bit tomorrow. And I think Gertie will probably be able to take her cone off tomorrow, and it'll transfer to Idabel. So that's that.
Stop purring.
She says, "What is this talk? What is this talk?" So how's everyone else out there today? We're going to, like I said, these videos now are going to be demonstrational or check-ins. They are not going to be selling shows this week. At least that's the plan. Let's hope that works out.
All right, well, flip it.
Marianne says, although I do hear some people not getting notified, even set up. I know, I think it depends if you use the app a lot or not. If you use the browser, I think you get less notifications. But if you use the YouTube app, it usually is pretty good about sending out notifications.
So do you have any things that you want to tell people about?
Well, I posted a little screenshot of the new website update that I'm working on, just to let you all kind of see what kind of way we're headed with that. So I posted that on my William Tries Things and also in the Design Challenges group. So if you jump in there, you can kind of see it's very rough right now, and it's just the start of building out the new website. But it gives you kind of an idea of what we're going with, and trying to make it more personal instead of more product oriented right in your face as it was before. The website is down now. It will be down the rest of this week. So there's no way to place an online order through the website at this moment, but we'll reopen that at the beginning of next week with a new, hopefully debuted website. We'll see how far I get. But it is something that we will kind of tweak and work on as time goes on, but we will have a new debut starting next week. So I think that's interesting. Marianne says, I do use the app, so maybe that's why I get them. Yeah. Do you have anything?
I'm in a show at Peters Valley. It's called Making Matters. That should debut, I think, next week.
Okay.
Or this weekend. I can't remember. Maybe this weekend it opens.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're in New Jersey,
Oh, Gesundheit.
stop by and see it.
Good. Suzanne says, but we can use the D stash or not. You can still claim things in the D stash.
But it's not only for one day only. And then D stash is done.
Oh, I was going to leave it open, but
No, I want to clear everything out.
okay.
No, everything's going.
Okay. I was just going to leave it open till the end, and then we start new.
Over.
So Andrew
Clean
says
slate.
the D stash is open tonight only. So if you haven't grabbed anything you want in the D stash, grab it now.
Mm-hmm. And then it's clean slate.
Clean slate.
We're getting every single package out this week.
That's the goal. That's the goal.
No linger.
Suzanne says, no problem. Just wanted to know something. Oh, I had a little something crawling on me.
Yeah, that's what we're doing. Is that's just reset. We have this tendency of like letting things linger, and then it never actually gets down to zero. So we're gonna try to get everything out that we can, because some things there's some stuff that can't be done because it's not manufactured yet. But that's another story for another day. So,
Teresa's here. Hello, Teresa. Thank you for joining us.
all right. Well, if we don't have any more things to say, flip it so we can get the show on the road.
Let's flip it.
We don't need to wait for people to come in because you're going to need higher up than that because I can't work another little bit. Yeah, this may seem rushed compared to our like 5-hour long lives, but if we stay on forever, then we're never going to get any work done. So we gotta do what we gotta do.
Okay. I think that may be good.
Do you have it?
I think so. Let me jump out of here. Let him jump in.
All right.
See if it looks good.
And then
Oh, I may
we'll
have it mirrored. Do I still have it mirrored? Yeah, I still have it mirrored. Forgot about that. There we go.
all right. So while I'm working on this, I think Juan's gonna start clearing some of the one of the corners in the office so that we can move the bookcase up. Unless you don't want to do that.
I can probably do that. I'm gonna sort some stuff here. Here's some rooms.
All right. So if you're on the Patreon, then you got a chance to see.
Oh, did you bring the computer home or anything?
Mm-mm.
Oh.
I had to go to the bathroom, so there was no stopping for this. All right, so I have these pieces. If you're on the Patreon, let me show you the Patreon address in case you're like, what is he talking about? Is he making stuff up? No. So I talk about how these are made. I kind of feel like with everything going on in the world, we need to protect our hearts. And our kind of peace of mind as we navigate all of this. So, if you're on our Patreon, I show from how I started with a wire and then built a polymer. So, for right now, what I'm going to do is show you how to paint these. They're polymer clay and they're designed to be ornaments. So, that's why they have a bail like this. I really like the bail, it's copper. So I use a dark body clay, and the reason why I use dark clay instead of like white or cream or whatever is because I'm going to do an effect called chiaroscuro. Now, chiaroscuro is going from light or from dark to light, and hopefully it gives a nice kind of rich surface embellishment with the paint. So today we're going to be using acrylic paint. My favorite acrylic paint is a golden fluid paint. And the reason why I like the golden paint is because, and I like the fluid, is because the gels that they use can be kind of gummy. For the other, they put binders in that they put a thickener, which makes it a little bit. Not hot what I like. I like a smooth paint. Golden paints are highly saturated with pigments. They're light, fast, and I prefer to use them if I can. All right. So I've got this, and so the clay that I use for this is I use a mixture of Super Sculpey, Primo, and different colored clays so that I can get a darker base. And as you can see, there's little bits of that pink and stuff, but you don't have to worry about that. So I have these. I'm going to work maybe with, since I'm going to be working with this green eye, I think it might look nice to have a contrast. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get some of this red, and this is the one I have. I'm only going to use a little bit. I have a soft brush that's fine. It's not super small because I don't want to be here all day. And the other thing is I want a flat spot in the brush because that will give me for coverage. If you have a little point, generally speaking, if there's just a small point, you'll be pushing your brush flat and you'll be running your brush. So I'm just going to dip a little bit into these, and I'm going to do a light quick coat. I want to kind of dry brush this, meaning that I'm not adding a lot of liquid to this. It's already pretty liquid. And this will dry very quickly, which is what we want. We want this to be quick. We don't want this to take a long time to dry. I know there's ones that have like extenders put in there. I don't want to put the extender in there. I want this to be as quick as possible. All right. I'm going to be mindful of the glass eye, but if it gets on there, that's okay, because all I need to do is scrape off the paint if it touches the glass when it's dry. So you can, in theory, paint this all over, and you can do that and it'll be completely fine. But it means more work later to clean up. So I'm going to save myself that. Now, I know there's a lot of controversy over painted polymer clay. There's some people that say, oh, you shouldn't paint polymer clay. And depending on what you're using it for, maybe they're right. It depends on the style that you're working in. What I think of it is it's a thin skin of acrylic. And as long as you're not rolling around on the concrete, you should be fine. And if it holds up on paintings on walls, it'll hold up on an ornament. So that's my feeling on this. I'm also going to seal this, and that's going to help give a little bit of protection on this. Again, acrylic is basically a colored liquid emulsified plastic. So you really have, it's got a built-in kind of protection with this. So as I go over for the second coat, you'll notice the colors will change. See how it's much brighter on this edge than it is on the other. And what that's doing is you're building up those layers, and the layers will help with the saturation of the color of this paint. One of the things that they have, which I think is kind of useful for golden paints, is they have a little thing on the side of the bottle, and that shows you some dark stripes that they put the paint on top. And that shows you just how opaque the paint is. If you have a really kind of washy paint that's very transparent, and what you're going to end up having to put a lot of layers, or you'll have to put a base layer down. So just keep that in mind when you're choosing your paint, because there are some colors that are really beautiful, but they're meant to be like an anglaise, where you're putting that on top of something else instead of, just straight up. It's like there's originally some of the paints, the materials they use would cause that. So, for example, zinc white is kind of a ghostly translucent, as opposed to like a titanium dioxide or a titanium white, which has a much more saturated white. All right, so there's the first layer of this. There's a couple areas where I could go in and detail them if I wanted to. But again, I'm dry brushing this on. So I want to make sure that I get all of the paint off of the brush. I don't want there to be a bunch of paint on the brush, because if there's a bunch of paint on the brush, it's going to dry into the bristles, and then basically you'll have a sculpting tool and not a paintbrush. You can also wash your brush out as you go and keep it nice and clean. However, then you'll have to dry your brush out, because if you have a too wet of a brush, it will go into all the nooks and crannies, and we don't want that necessarily. We just want to be hitting the tops. All right, so the next thing I'm going to do is, do you have like a postcard or something that's like a shiny paper? No, that's got it needs like a UV coating. This will work. Okay, so if you're new to mixing color, I suggest you get a white piece of plastic. You can use like a Chinese takeout container. Those work well. I use those all the time to mix paint. I like those because they have a lid and you can just quickly put the lid on and go. I tend to only use the amount of paint that I'm going to use. I'll rephrase that. I don't squeeze out more paint than I need, because sometimes if you squeeze out more paint than you need, generally speaking, it just goes to waste. And so a lot of times I just take out what I need, or I mix a batch and then put it in a sealed container if I'm going to have a lot of it. All right, so this is a piece of cardstock that has UV coating on it, and you can tell because it's nice and shiny. That means the paint won't get soaked into the paper. They spray it with a UV coating to protect the colors, but what that does is it seals up the pores of the paper, and it doesn't leach the juiciness of the paint out and dry it out, basically. Again, a piece of plastic works better. If you're new to mixing paint, I recommend a white background. And the reason why I recommend a white background as opposed to like what I'm doing is sometimes these colors will change the way you see things. So um, as you can see now, this red is almost taking on a purple hue to it, and that's a visual kind of trick that your eye is doing. It's mixing the blue of that and the red of that. But I know that I haven't mixed any blue in, so it's the same color as that. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to mix in a little bit of yellow and a little bit of white, just a drop on both of these. And hopefully I have it. Again, this is my favorite of the paints. I know some other people, they like different ones, but this is one of my favorites. So this is going to make it kind of like a coral color. So when you mix that, it's like an orange, but since it has a different kind of base, it's not going to be like I guess it's a light orange. And I want to make sure that this gets thoroughly mixed. I'm going to kind of press down the sides of this and scrape off the sides. And that's so that I can really get in there and not have a bunch of streaks. And then this is going to take a light hand. So I'm just going to lightly go over the top. Just ever so slightly. And that's going to bring out the highlights in this. Because these are kind of rustic, I don't want to spend too much time. I find that when I'm doing things that are rustic, if I try to agonize over it, generally speaking, it looks like that. So I don't want it to look all tortured, but you can see the difference between up here and down here. Sun says she just claimed stuff from the D-Stash. Thank you. All right. So again, I'm just lightly going over this and just dry brushing this on. I mixed my paint before I put it on. And when I'm building up layers like this, you can see how some of that dark under clay is showing through it. And, you can play with that. And I'm just going around some of the highlights around the eye to accentuate it. Make sure to flip your pieces in every direction so that you can see it from every angle and you're not just working from the top, because there are times when I thought, oh, I'm done painting, and then I pick something up and you can see there's a blank spot. For instance, there's a blank spot inside the inner eyelid of this eye. I'm okay with it. I kind of like it. It's almost like I like a mascara. It's almost like it's almost bringing out that detail. Now you may notice that I'm touching on here, and that's because it's already dry. So you gotta work a little bit quickly. If you dilly-dally, then you're going to end up, the paint is going to dry on your brush, and then you're not going to actually get any paint on there. You can also, if you want, you can kind of scrub it into the surface and take little, kind of little bites, or little bits of it, and get in there. Now, if there are areas that if you see like a crack or something, you can always fill that in if you want with a paint. And that's one way that you can kind of trick the eye into thinking that, for example, when I was pushing the paint or the polymer clay in, there was an area that where the clay wasn't perfectly smooth. I like that. I think it shows kind of the artist's hand in that. But I know some people are like, oh my gosh. So I work from a dark base, and I'm slowly adding light to this. And I want this to be almost pastel. And you'll be like, why you want the pastel? And you'll see in a second, because if I make this too dark, what will happen is it'll go really dark and muddy, which could be an effect if you want that. I don't want that. I want this to be kind of medium toned. So I'm going to use this pink to this kind of corally color to accentuate that. All right, so I've got a little bit of extra on here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to paint this really quick. I don't want these all to match. I want them all to be kind of different. So um, you'll see that as I'm working. So right now, like, see how I got that little bit of paint on the eyeball? That's okay. I can just wipe that off, or I can later take a tool and scrape the glass, and you'll get all of that excess or acrylic paint off. That's one of the reasons why I like acrylic, is because it dries fairly quickly. With oil paint, you can do the same technique. However, it takes much longer, and it does have some different qualities which I like. So sometimes what I'll do is I'll get a water-based oil paint, which dries a lot quicker than the oil-based oil paint. You look for water-soluble oil paint, and I'll do some of my techniques using that. And it's interesting how even how you can kind of layer up different paints. One thing I will say is that you can paint oils on top of acrylic, but you can't paint. I mean, you can do whatever you want. You just may end up with problems. You but um, if you paint, you can paint oil on top of acrylic, but not acrylic on top of oil. And the reason why is it will cause the paint to curdle, it'll do all kinds of wild stuff. Or it will start to mix in depending on how dry it is. And it can start to split over time. So it may look fine the first week, but then give it a little bit of time and it'll look completely different. So just keep that in mind, so that you don't kind of spend all this time painting and then the next thing you know, it's no good. All right, so I'm going to show you the difference between these two. As you can see, this looks different than this one. And if I did this on top of a bright base instead of a dark base, it would look different as well. So just keep that in mind as you're working. Now, one thing I will say on top of everything else, the one thing I just wanted to say is that if you keep going over the same places before it has a chance to dry, you can end up pulling up the paint. So try to just go in one shot, or let it dry and then paint over it. All right, so I've got this, and I want to tweak up. I want to make some of this a little bit brighter and a little bit more intense. So I'm gonna sparingly show you how to kind of accentuate that brightness. And I'm not taking out a lot of paint. You can see that I'm just kind of only taking out a couple drops here and a couple drops there. And I don't want to squeeze out the whole bottle because it'll be dry by the time I'm ready to use it. And I'm a relatively slow painter, believe it or not. And so just, so anyway, so this is me going over the red on top of that kind of coral color. Isn't that interesting how it can change the look? It's subtle. It's not like super different, but it is something that the more you look at the color and the more that you're like familiarized with color and working with color, especially with paint for polymer, you'll start to see things. Now, you may be tempted to get the spray paint out and to go hog wild and just bust them all out. Don't do that. And the reason why is it's the aerosol in the spray paint breaks down the polymer clay and it makes it a sticky mess. I spray painted my board, as kind of it's the board that I kind of work with. It's kind of my painting board, and even that, it started breaking down the polymer even though it was dry. So if you have painted furniture, do not put the polymer clay on the painted furniture, especially if you spray painted it, because it can start to melt the polymer clay and make it impossible to use. And then I don't know what ends up happening. It gets like maybe some of the chemical properties get thrown off. But anyways, so don't do that. And if you do, put a layer of clear in between or whatever in between. I just had some clear gesso. I don't really use the clear gesso very much because it creates a tooth that's real kind of heavy duty, and it can chew up your brushes. And I don't need help with that. So I didn't do it. So I don't use it very much. So I used it to paint this. All right, I'm going to show you these two. Look how they look similar, and yet they're different. All right, so now I am going to wash my brush out. If you are concerned about your brushes, for these ones, I use relatively inexpensive brushes, so I'm not super particular about them. Some folks, they like to use very expensive brushes. If I was one of those people who like to use very expensive brushes, I would wash them more frequently and not leave them sitting in water, and take better care of them. But because I kind of use and abuse them, and I know that that's kind of like the way that I'm working, you know, I'm not as careful as I could be. Now, if you are one of those people who's super careful, you can rinse it out with clean water. If you are in an area that you don't have access to kind of changing your water out very often, you can put 1 or 2 drops of ammonia in your water, and that will help it from going funky. Sometimes you may notice this if you go into somebody's studio and they use acrylic paint. It can kind of smell like booty hole, because basically the paint starts rotting. So 1 or 2 drops of ammonia, and that will help keep the bacteria from forming, and it should not affect any kind of paint dispersions or any kind of, it won't cause your paint to curdle or anything like that. Now, don't put too much. And yeah, just be careful with that. Anyways, so we talked about the paint going kind of bad and curdling, and also about washing brushes. So if you are concerned about your brushes, you can rinse them out with clean water. You can also use Dawn dish detergent, and that will help break down any kind of oils in it. It's a degreaser and a de-oiler, so it will help with that. However, just like your hair, if you keep using super harsh soaps on your hair, guess what? Your hair is going to become split ends and brittle like a broom. So that's not ideal either. So there's a product called the Masters brush cleaner. It's a it's a it's a sturdy cleaner. It gets everything out, but you also want to have a cleaner that's going to have something that kind of moisturizes the bristles and keep them nice. So, but that's only if you're going to be using fancy brushes. But I wanted to put that in there in case you are somebody who's going to use brushes that are a little bit more high dollar than the ones that I use. All right. Like when I work with the enamel paints, I have some very expensive sable brushes, and those ones are like $40 a pop, and I baby that shit like it's a baby because I don't want to waste that brush. So I'm pretty particular about that. But this one, I got a 10 pack for $1 or whatever. So um, it's, it says, why won't I get the baby treatment? Oh, well. You get what you get. Drowned in the dirty water. All right. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take some raw umber. Hopefully I have some. I can use this. So this is they call it real brown as opposed to fake brown. This one's a multi-surface one. This is from Folk Art. Um, it is what it is. I like the golden, but I ran out, so I have this. I have an air with a spare. Always have a backup. And this one's the one that you can get from Walmart. I like this one, the satin one, because if you use the Folk Art paint, that is like their regular blend. It tends to go super matte. And then that may not be what you want. If you do, if that's the only thing you have and that's the only like you're just stuck with it, you can mix in a little bit more gel medium into that, and it will help create a little bit better of a like a glazing medium. So that's what I'm going to be using this for, as a glazing medium. All right. Do you have a paper towel?
No, I can get you something.
I would like to have a paper towel, please. This may work. Never mind. William, this will work. You don't want to get a paper towel that's super fibrous. So, for instance, if you have toilet paper, maybe go down to like the KFC and get them free napkins. Because if you use toilet paper, it will start to dissolve and come apart while you're doing this technique. And then you'll have little chunks of toilet paper stuck in it. So this is just like a napkin. I do like low fiber napkins. So that's probably sounds weird, but you don't want the ones that's going to instantly disintegrate. You want something that's going to hold up a little bit better. All right. So I'm just, you have to, this one is something that you have to work quickly with. So just keep that in mind. I will do this in sections. My brush is still a little bit wet from when I washed it. And I'm just going to go and lightly cover this. And I'm kind of gonna get that into like the recessed areas. This is still a little bit too wet, but that's okay. I'm gonna let that dry for just a second while I'm working on the edges. And I can tell the difference between if there's water or not, because it'll have a darker look like that. Look, it almost looks like black. And then this is a lot lighter. It looks like chocolate milk as opposed to um, like a dark chocolate. It looks like milk chocolate as opposed to dark chocolate. I want the dark chocolate look. And I'm just painting over this whole entire thing. You don't have to use brown if you don't want to use it. I like it because it gives an antique look, but that's me. I like the antique look. All right, this is still a little bit wet on the surface, so I'm just going to scrub it in a little bit more and maybe mix in a little bit more. Now, this is one where I tend to use a cheaper paint for this process, and it's because I wipe it off. And so after a while, I'm going to come back in and wipe it. Now, I'm not wiping so hard that I wipe everything off. I'm also not scrubbing it because I can scrub the paint off the polymer. So I'm using a light hand and just wiping off the surface. All right. So this is still wet. And you can see there's paint on the eyeball, but don't worry about that. All right. And this is also an opportunity if you wanted to come back over with some highlights and just touch them up with a little bit of highlights here and there. That's also an option. And I'm going to get over here and work on this one. So we're just working on this, and this is basically antiquing the heart. It's also bringing out some of the details. Some of the details you may not see unless you do this. So when you're doing, like when they do those miniatures and stuff, they kind of crudely paint all the base layers in, and then they go back with an antiquing glaze, and then it looks like they spent 100 hours hand painting everything, when really it took like 5 minutes to paint, which is still a long time in the sweatshop. But, you know, if you don't like that and you want it to have a fresher look, you can also do that. If you want to have like a fresher look, you can also tint some your paint so that it's really light, it's almost white, and then go over and dry brush on top, and that'll give a different effect to these ones. So that's what we're doing with that. All right, so that one has dried. So you'll see it. You can see how quickly it dries. That's no joke. And I'm gonna put just a drop of this paint, this white paint, and it's got a little bit of that brown still left in the bristles from the glazing, the antiquing. And I'm going to go over this with that. And so it gives it a little bit of a different look, a more kind of distressed, shabby chic heart. But again, I want this to be a light hand. I don't want it super heavy-handed with this. And if you don't like it, you can always paint on top of it. So I'm not wild about this white in hindsight. So I'm just gonna layer this completely so it's not super patchy. If you wanted to do more of a patchy look, you could do that. I mean, you can do whatever you want. That's the nice thing about this, is that you're in control. You're in the driver's seat. You get to choose your own adventure. So if you want your heart to be patchy and look like it got the mange, you can let it be patchy and look like it have the mange if you want. Me, I don't want that. So I'm gonna be a little bit strategic in where I put this white, but for the most part, I'm just gonna cover the whole thing, and then I'm gonna do a light kind of red glaze on top. All right, Suzanne says very nice. Thank you. But look how putting the lighter on top of that dark, it really makes the letters stand out. And like anything, the more time and more kind of mindfulness you give into a project, the better it'll look. If you're kind of just like rushing things, sometimes that's where things don't always look their best. So, you know, if you put the time in and the effort in and you try to be conscious about what you're doing, you know, it'll create different looks. All right. So, but again, just a couple of seconds worth of painting and it looks very different. At this point, you can be done if you want. I'm going to keep adding a few layers on top of this, and then I'll show you how I can clear out the eye without actually scraping it. And I'll try to get a little bit extra paint on the eye so you can see me cleaning it. All right, I'm wiping down my brush. And then I'll go back to this red, and then it's gonna hopefully pop really nice. And give a nice kind of creaminess to it. And I'm just dry brushing this on, and there you go. Lorraine says, I like the results. Thanks. Now, another thing you can do is you can work on building layers going chromatically. So if you wanted to start with a red, work your way up to orange, and then hit it at the end with some yellow, and you'll get some really interesting effects. And then you can use other colors too. So if you wanted to start with a dark purple and you work your way up to a lighter color or red, it'll change the way that the surface looks of this paint. I don't want this to be super opaque either. So that's why I'm just gently dry brushing. I don't want this to be super saturated. If you want it to be super saturated, that's your choice. But I want those layers. I want those see-through layers. I want it to kind of have that kind of that funkiness to it. And because I want that richness to kind of show through. So that's the point of building the layers. You want a rich surface. Now, if you're like super unhappy with this, you can take a scrub brush. Thanks. And some soap and water and scrub it. Will it damage the polymer? It depends how hard you scrub and what you scrub it with. So you just have to be mindful of that. And I'm going to do one more little dabadooey on the back, maybe. Maybe 2 dabs. Weather's changing here. I can feel it. And so, yeah, I'm just building this up. I think it gives a little bit more visual interest than just plain. Notice I'm not hitting the wire. The hanging wire for these. I don't want that painted I spent a lot of time wrapping these wires around, so I don't necessarily want them to get covered up with paint. But if you wanted to do that, you could 100% do that. Suzanne said, we're about to get a storm. We had one roll through this afternoon that was real quick. Yeah, it passed pretty much as quickly as it came. All right. So I have one more spot that I'm going to hit. And then I'm going to show you how to clean the eye out. All right, so I'm getting closer to where I want to be. I may go back over this with some of the antiquing glaze because I kind of like it to be a little bit darker. But again, we're building up layers, and I don't want this to be all like one color. But see the difference? See? All right, so I'm going to go over this real quick. And then we'll see. I may need to get some more of this paint because I'm almost out. And I like this. It gives it a little bit more character. You can paint it all one solid color if that's more your jam. But I want this to look more painterly. And you can get that look by layering up all kinds of stuff. Like spritzing paint on, using the back of a brush and kind of taking and dipping it in the paint and then flicking it on, and it kind of gives a splatter effect. You can use an atomizer and make this really thin and then put it in one of those atomizers and then spritz it on. And it'll give you a different kind of look. So some of those, I wanted the surface to kind of look, to have a lot of depth. And so I use that. And so I love these. Thank you. All right, so I'm almost done with this one. And again, I'm gonna try to make these all different. So I want some to be lighter, some of them to be darker, some of them to be a little bit more juicy, some to be like a little bit more dried out. And so I can play around with the different layers of color. Ian says, I'm at work, so I'll have to watch later. Well, thanks for popping in and saying hello. All right. So I'm going to seal this up before it dries out. I don't want this to dry out. And I'll just wipe off any of the excess. All right. So one thing I also like is I like a kind of satiny matte finish. I don't like it to be super glossy. I know some folks, they like a super gloss. So I will tend to mix. This is from Christy Friesen. It's matte Swelligant. There's not much, and then there's a couple drops left. I think she discontinued manufacturing this, so if you want that, you kind of have to get it quick. All right, I put a lot of water on my brush. And I'm going to go in here and really scrub the heck out of it using the bristles. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my paper towel and I'm going to go in there and I'm going to wick up all of the excess water. And I'm going to kind of go in there and give it a scrub on the inside. And that's how you get the paint off of the eye. So say you're like painting quick and you get paint on the glass eye. That's how you get it off. And if you really can't get in there, if you take a piece of wire, I would use a little thicker wire than this. And you can go in there like that and scrape underneath if it goes underneath the eyelid. All right. So there's that. I'm going to wash my brush out really good. And then I'm going to coat this with some Swelligant. Sometimes I have this medium that's a dead flat matte medium or glaze, and I will take some of that and mix that in with this. And I like this because it's designed for polymer clay and metal. It doesn't, you can brush it on, you can spray it on, and it doesn't look like there's anything on there. Some of the sealants for polymer clay look kind of plasticky, and I don't want that. The other nice perk of this is that if you do any kind of metallics, if you have any metallic colors that you paint on, this sealant won't strip that out. Sometimes after, if you do metallic paint and then you seal it, what will happen is it will make those colors go dead and take some of that flash out. For example, gold can end up looking like yellow, just straight up yellow. The nice thing about this is that because there's a hanging hook as an ornament, if I'm kind of doing a batch production, I can just paint this on and then hang it up and let it dry. And I don't have to worry about that. And I have an easy way of holding this, so I don't have to do one side at a time. If you are doing a project where you only have access to one side at a time and you don't have like a hanging kind of action like this, I would do one side, let that dry, flip it over, and then do the other side. And that way, you can do that and it's not going to get stuck to your board, for example. Teresa says, they look wonderful. Thank you. All right, so I'm going to put this off to the side and hopefully that's dry enough. And then I'm going to paint this on there while I've still got it. All right, and that's how you paint polymer, y'all. So in this kind of module, we went over how to dry brush, how to layer paint, cast color, contrast color, and building color and richness through layering, antiquing glaze, and how to finish polymer clay. It's almost like a real class, huh? In this module, we'll cover and so I have 38 more hearts to go. But I picked this kind of a reddish color for that one, so it contrasts with that green. And then, so you can see how they look kind of similar, but they're different. And then if I wanted to, I can also go back over this and continue to paint and embellish them and add layers. And that's perfectly fine. Julie says, fun to watch and learn. I really enjoyed the pieces that you were painting the other day. Were you using the vintage paints? I'll just give it another coat of this. I don't know if you can buy this Swelligant directly from Christy or not, because she's in Hawaii, so I know you can get it on Amazon. Maybe William will put up an affiliate link in there. All right, so there's that, and there's that. Julie says, thanks, Andrew. Yes, vintage. I have a ton. Yeah, vintage is a little bit different. They have, I think, it's some kind of alcohol base on those. I'm not 100% sure what they use, but it acts different than acrylic paint. It acts similar to acrylic paint, but it's different. Because I've seen people mix water into it, and it can kind of curdle out the paint that way. I do like it if you're going to work with metal. It works beautifully on metal. All right. So I still have a little bit of this left, and I don't want it to dry out. So I'm going to do another one real quick while we're here. Let's do a blue. Maybe we'll do blue and maybe this one. Julie says it really does. All right, so this is a little bit different in the sense that I have that swelligant still on the brush. So if you wanted to do like a really light antiquing glaze, you could also make your own really light antiquing glaze using a little bit of that. And in theory, if I really wanted to like make those really juicy, those red ones, I could go in and kind of shade that with this blue color. I may do that for fun. Let's see. See, this is my problem, is that I can I'll keep noodling. Sandra says, looking good, Andrew. Thank you. It switched. I should have turned off the camera. Oh, it did it again. Boulder Dash. I don't know what it is with me, but I have like the devil touch when it comes to this thing. Flipping. Alright, well, it's not going to be different. Y'all going to have just black borders on the side. And I'm just going to quickly. One of the keys is timing with this. So, Michelle says it does it to William too. You know, StreamYard used to never do that. And I don't know if there's a way to lock the camera in orientation or not. But like I was saying is your timing is everything. So it really, if you work too slow for some of these techniques, you're not going to get the right consistency of the paint. And if you work too fast, sometimes you won't get the right consistency either. So you kind of have to find just right, and getting the right kind of consistency to the paint is also essential as well. So that one I'll do. Finish off. I maybe put in a little bit of this white. Sweet pieces. Maybe you have to lock your camera on your phone before you go live. I know that's a way. There's a way to do it. I lock. This isn't my camera. But I always have mine locked, and it still does it. So I don't know. Maybe. I'm sure there's a way. Where there's a will, there's a way to do anything, I guess. All right.
See your screen twisted, it looks like?
Uh-huh. And I try to fix it and it's still messed up, so.
Can't find it. Swelligan's not on
Amazon anymore?
No, there's a green one only.
Hmm.
Clear sealant. You can get it from there's an art supply store that sells it, but that's it that I can find.
Wow. Buy it before it's gone.
Yeah, they sell it in the big bottles. Get the big bottle.
It's expensive, but
It's like $54.
yeah, it's not inexpensive.
It'll last you a long time.
Uh-huh. You don't want to use a whole gallon full. Like I said, you want to measure off the amount that you're going to use. And then if you have any backup projects, I bust those out and I'll put another coat of sealant on it just for fun. And it's not going to hurt it nothing. But so I'm just dry brushing. And like if you put in a little bit of brown into your white, it also cuts the kind of brightness off of them. So instead of like really super contrasting, you have a little bit more, it's a little bit more subdued. So your white is not super stark. It has a little bit of, see how I'm kind of dry brushing this on? It brings out that kind of texture. And I want it to have that texture. If I want it to be perfectly smooth, I'd cut it out with a laser and not hand sculpt it. So, Lorraine says, I love the blue heart. Thank you. And I'm just kind of building up those layers. But I'm working on a dark base, so I think that matters. If you work from a light base, it's a little bit different. So back in the day, when the Titian was painting, he would put what they call a Venetian red ground, and that's how he gets his figures to have kind of this like glowing kind of light from their flesh. Is because he works with a Venetian red background. The Impressionists, they would often use a bright white background. So, like, what's their name? That guy who did the lunch, the park, the lunch in the park on the side of the, I don't know what it's called. Syrah is the pointillist guy. I can't remember. Maybe y'all know. But anyway, so he worked with a light background, and it caused the painting to it almost like buzzes in your eye because it's got that. It's like an optical illusion. So there you go. So you see the difference. And while this is still kind of, you can also selectively scrub off parts of this, and that'll give it a different look as well. So there's different ways you can age stuff too. So if you're like, oh, I don't want this to look like this, you can age things in a different way. And there's all kinds of techniques of like spraying stuff while it's still wet and letting it kind of bead up and bubble. You can also paint on a layer of Elmer's glue and then put some paint on top of it. And as it dries, it kind of creates a crackle because the glue dries at a different rate than the paint, and so the paint ends up splitting and causes that crackle. There's also this product called Chroma, which is a crackle paste. If you wanted to have a crackle heart, I don't do a ton with crackle. I can see the appeal, but I just don't in my own work. And so there you go. All right, so I'm gonna hit this again since I went over it with some of the paint. So sometimes when you add layers of paint, what ends up happening is it makes it shiny again in certain spots. So the more layers of this I'm adding, the more I kind of will make it a little bit more matte. You can also, if you want it to be like really matte, you can also mix in marble dust into your paint, and it will have a super matte kind of effect. You want to use that very sparingly, just a little bit. And the other thing is that if you add that in, it'll make bright colors more pastel because you're basically mixing white into it. I've seen all kinds of stuff. People mix cornstarch into their paints. People use shredded tires. There's garnet powder that people have mixed in. And when it dries, it kind of creates a speckled look. All right. There you go. All right, so it's been an hour and some change. So we're going to get back to work at the cottage. Thank you so much to everybody who participated in our online sales. Like William said, the online store is closed now and will be closed for the rest of the week. D-Stash closes tonight, so if there's anything in the D-Stash that you are kind of on the fence about, and we're like, well, maybe, just make sure to get it before the end of the night. The other thing I'm going to mention about that is that some of those things are from the trunk show, so if you want those, you kind of have to get them because by the time we are back on to sell, next week, we're gonna probably be end up sending those back. So get those as soon as possible so that we can kind of put those in your packages. And we're gonna try to get all of our packages out this week from stuff that we can send this. All right.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Have a great night. See ya.